So I'm not sure exactly where to start. Uh, I think what I can do, let me see, I may use this anyway.
Yeah, see if it works. Yeah, there's an on-off button. Let's see,
Mic test.
there's an on-off button. Try that.
Mic test, testing.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the guys right here on the front row. It's a young man with a green shirt on. Why are you here?
To learn.
Huh?
I would like to learn.
I didn't hear you.
I'm here to learn.
You are here to learn.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if I know what that means, but we'll stay with that for the time being. Why are you here?
I'm here to participate in this wonderful music that makes me very happy
You,
and try to be killing.
I might need to get a mic for these guys, because I'm having trouble hearing them.
Well, it's kind of the same answer, right? God says he's here because he wants to be killing on his instrument, and
I want to participate in the music.
You want to play? You want to play what? What music?
Jazz, Black American music.
Black American music. What the hell is that?
That's what ask Nicholas Payton.
you're just
Well, no, I don't. I'm not too sure that I need to consult Nicholas Payton on anything right now. But anyway, I mean, I could spend a certain amount of time talking about the whole concept of the socialization process of names for which black is one, which doesn't really connote anything in particular. Anyway, that also includes jazz. A good many years ago, there were ballrooms, I guess, for the lack of a better term, used to hire musicians to play, and they would refer to them as jazz band, J-A-S-S. In fact, you can look through the history book, you see the term and the spelling of it. Well, urban legends has it that juvenile delinquents, or whatever you want to call them, would come and scratch out the J, which was a big deal at that time. So somebody got the idea of respelling it phonetically and then started spelling it J-A-Z-Z, which probably solved the graffiti problem. All right? The city council in the 1920s here in New Orleans denounced the music and said that under no circumstance should it be allowed in any of the public schools at all. Now, the city council really had no authority with the school system, but that was their opinion. So anyway, I'll assume that you say you are here to learn jazz. What's your instrument?
Guitar. Guitar.
Guitar. Yeah, you got a great teacher for starts.
Yeah.
All right. What about you? Why are you here?
I'm actually not from here. I'm originally from New Mexico. And so when I left, I told myself and I made a promise that I will become the strongest drummer that I can be. And so specifically when studying jazz, I thought what better way to become a stronger jazz drummer than to come to New Orleans. And so
I'm sorry, I'm kind of hard to hear right now.
Let me do this, I'll give him the microphone, and then I'll get you back the answer. Here you go, speak into that so he can hear you.
Cool. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm originally from New Mexico, and so I came here specifically to become a stronger drummer. And so I wanted to increase my jazz chops, become a stronger jazz drummer. And I came here because what better way to become a stronger jazz drummer than to come to New Orleans itself?
So that's a good.
So that's why you are here?
Yes.
Okay. Why are you here?
I'm here to learn and meet more people.
You are here
Here to learn and meet people who like doing the same thing as me.
to
Learn
learn
and meet people.
Yeah.
to learn music.
Yeah. And meet other musicians.
I guess that's as good an excuse as any, you know. All right. All right, rather, I don't want to take up a lot of time with that one question. But anyway, is there anybody who wishes to share so everybody else can hear why they came to this institution and why they came to this program?
You come take the mic. This is your big moment.
Alright. Well, I came to this institution in the city a year ago to, I fell in love with jazz in high school, and I wanted to continue to play the genre of music and learn more about it because it was a place where you could express yourself and like ideas you had and just express yourself through music. So I came here to learn how to, be a better jazz musician all around more than just a drummer.
That too is as good an excuse as any. All right. I'm not really sure exactly where to start because nobody is asking any questions.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Speak louder.
Well,
Must be your birthday today.
well, first off, thank you for being here. I have a question for you. I know you're a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. I currently play in the Army band, and I was curious about your experiences and how did you go into the service and what did it do for you, if anything? If you could share a little bit about that.
This is my experience in the service.
Yeah, Marines. Yeah.
I had a real good experience in the service, except for 2 different times. One time was boot camp, and the other was infantry training. Neither of those was fun. But, anyway, I survived it. Now, primary duty station, I was able to get, I said my MOS. See, MOS stands for the Military Occupational Service Number. They have a number for every instrument. Mine was something 31, I think. Anyway, I was in the Marine band as a clarinet player. So, and this was in Santa Ana, California, which was an air wing, as they call it. This is where Marine pilots trained. I won't go into what that looked like. But anyway, that was my duty station. So a sergeant came up to me and asked me, how'd you like to be on television? I thought he was joking. But anyway, it turns out that the Marines had sent a lieutenant named Bob Osterberg into Los Angeles, which is about maybe 60 miles away from Santa Ana, to get a show that would promote the Marine Corps. And there was a group, it was a quartet called the Corps Four, which was piano, bass, drums, and guitar. The piano player's enlistment was up, so they were looking for another piano player, and they just heard about me. So I joined that group and stayed in that group for the duration of the time that I was in the Marine Corps.
Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
I volunteered for the draft. This is that's what they called it. The military was still conscripting at the time. And I had already finished from Dillard Local University. And I knew I was facing being drafted, so I wanted to get the whole process done behind me, because by this time I was 21 years old, and the guy from the Marine recruiter called me and asked about joining the Marine Corps. Most times when you join, you're looking at 3 years. So I said, no, man, I'm not interested in 3 years. He said, well, okay, if you volunteer for the draft, you can go in for 2 years. I said, that sounds better. So then he said, yeah, okay, well, you can come in and we can send you to Paris Island. I said, whoa, stop right there. I had heard about Paris Island. In fact, while I was in the boot camp, 6 Marines got drowned in Paris Island. And it's in South Carolina, it's in the swamp. So he said, well, if you don't want to go there, you can go to San Diego. Well, that sounded kind of romantic, San Diego. Take it from me, it wasn't romantic, but it wasn't the swamp. So I volunteered for the draft, which was 2 years, and went to San Diego and went through boot camp in San Diego, and then they shipped us to Oceanside, California for infantry training. At that time, infantry training consisted of preparing you for beachhead. This is like old World War II training. And we had to follow, chase behind those tanks, you know, eating the dust and all of that. And that was the military training aspect of it. Of lately, I witnessed from a distance anyway, there's an empty school that's been empty for maybe 25 years, which is around the corner from my house. So the Marine Corps made some deal with the school board, and they were training in that school. Well, what they were doing, which is a whole lot different from infantry training, they were training for the battles like Iraq, you know, which is door to door to door to door, that kind of thing. And they used that school, which I saw at least, you know, from a distance. But anyway, I had a great time once I got through with the training part. I was playing piano with the group and did that until I got out.
Can you speak a little bit about time? Can you speak a little bit about time and how you feel time whenever you're playing a tune?
Time? What about the time?
Like if you're trying to lay back, like be behind the beat or something, how would you go about doing that? Conceptualize.
He's talking about the rhythm, your sense of rhythm when you play.
Oh, when I play?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Let me think about this for a minute. See, being a piano player, it means that you are a member of a rhythm section. Now, the rhythm section is most times a bass player and a drummer. It can be a guitar player depending on the kind of music you're playing. Most of the music that I grew up playing, I played with a a bass player and a drummer. The first drummer that I played with, who was stylistically like Max Roach, was Edward Blackwell. And through him, I learned how to hear when the drummers were functioning, and if there was a drum solo, how the form that the drummer held would work out so I would know when to come in again. The bass player, there was an assortment of different bass players, but mostly what I tried to do was accompany, which we call comping, behind the soloist. Most cases, the soloist was tenor player. So you listen to recordings of quartets, like I listened to Thelonious Monk. Monk, I didn't get much help from listening to Monk, just in terms of accompaniment. But there was a lot that I learned from listening to Monk, which is a slightly different thing. But listening to other groups, like Clifford and Max or Miles Davis, and the ones who had a standard, so to speak, rhythm section, piano, bass, and drum, I would listen to them and learn how they comp behind some of the pieces that they played. The most difficult thing was to accompany a ballad. Now, this is kind of a funny story in a way. I was still in the military, and the rules of the Musicians Union made it so that even though we were a military unit, they had to hire one union member. So the lieutenant brought in the first was piano player, Walter Gross, who was the composer of Tenderly. And he was there for a while. So when he left, they brought in another pianist named Calvin Jackson. And I wasn't paying a lot of attention because mostly what they were doing, I was playing with the group on the instrumentals. So if there was a tempo involved, I would be playing with the drums, the bass, and the guitar. And the guest pianist would accompany, there would be a guest singer. Now, all of these people were coming from the Los Angeles area. So eventually, I don't know how it worked out, but anyway, the union and the corps, whatever, worked out something so that they did not need to have a civilian piano player. So the lieutenant came to me and he said, well, looks like you it. I said, what do you mean? He said, we don't need them other guys. So when we get the singers on the show, then you're gonna be the accompanist. What you think of that? I said, man, ain't no problem. That's a breeze. I said, yeah, okay. So we got this singer who came in. I can't remember which was the first one. And she was singing a ballad. And I got ready to play, and my mind went blank. I had no idea what to play because I hadn't listened to any pianists play behind the vocalist or any recordings or any of that. But what I would sometimes refer to as divine intervention, a voice came to me and said, do what Calvin did. And when I thought about it, that's when I started to listen to the words that the singer was singing. And then I would play things on the piano that matched whatever I could interpret with the words that was being sung. So that was my introduction into actually playing behind the singers, especially with a ballad, because that was the most difficult part. So when it came down to it, later on in years, as I encountered other people, there were local singers here that I played behind, like Jermaine Basil, and the late Lady BJ. I made a complete recording with her, but there were never a lot of local singers. But anyway, I never forgot the lesson that I learned in reference to having to play behind the singers when I was in the military. So that was basically it. And that's about it. I can't think of nothing else to address when it comes to that.
Can you talk about what it was like when you were learning jazz, and what's different about learning jazz as a young person now? I mean, what's the things that we're missing from when you were learning jazz and how you learned jazz as opposed to what's happening in current?
Okay, the question is, what's the difference between when I was learning how to play jazz and now? There's an assortment of differences. And see, the problem with answering this question is that the very first thing that you run into when you have to use words to explain something as ethereal as music, there's not a lot of vocabulary that you can use to actually define that. Now, the first thing is this. The first time that I heard live musicians, I had heard recordings on a jazz show that was about a half an hour on the radio, but there was not a lot of that. The first time I heard the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band, this was in 1949. I was in high school. And I didn't really know what they were doing, but I knew somehow or another that's what I wanted to do. Now, in terms of mentorship, now this is very important. In terms of mentorship, the first mentor that I had was named Harold Baptiste Jr., who was at one point on this faculty, later on.
It's up there on the wall.
Yeah, that's a picture of Harold on the wall. Harold was a very gentle soul and very understanding and highly tolerant of ignorant people like me. And I remember he went to Dillard University. It was out on the lakefront. And he was 2 or 3 grades ahead of me. And my friend Roger Dickinson and I were freshmen. So when I came to Dillard, it was the usual routine in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the European music you expected to learn, and teachers who despised jazz, what have you, those attitudes and all of the rest of that. So Harold started by showing us how to read chord symbols, which, I didn't really know how to read the chord symbols. But anyway, he showed us how to do that. And he had some piano skills. Mostly he was a saxophone player. And I had a piano at the house, which was purchased really for my younger sister, who was studying piano. And so I would sit at the piano and try to remember things that Harold showed me. At the same time, I was also listening to various recordings, jazz recordings, and practicing the piano. It was mostly like a fill-in here, fill-in over there. You hear somebody play something, you take that and see what you could do with it. And if you were fortunate enough to be able to play with some people who already knew how to play, then you could practice what you had. Now, there used to be jam sessions at a nightclub called a Dewdrop Inn on Sunday afternoons. And a lot of guys would go there on Sunday afternoon to try out whatever skills that they had. And I would go. And a turning point for me was one evening at the Dewdrop Inn. Harold Baptiste and I were hanging out together. And he lived right across the street from the Dewdrop, so we came over to see who was playing. Well, there was a tenor player named Lee Allen who was playing that night. And the piano player was named John Brunis. They called him Picky. John also had a son, not that John Brunis, the daddy. So he was kind of running late. And Lee Allen knew that Harold had some piano skill. So he asked Harold, he said, man, why don't you come and play until Picky gets here, because he's running late. So Harold said, let him play, talking about me. So I went up on the piano, and it was kind of a new experience for me. But see, the difference is this. The music that was being played at that time in a nightclub was rhythm and blues. Now the band, for all intents and purposes, that you could look at as a warm-up to whoever the singer was or whatever, they would play blues selection, instrumental blues, and maybe a ballad, like we call them standards. And anyway, I stayed on the piano for about an hour. So when piano player came and I got down, I said to myself, I stayed up there for an hour. Now the average set was an hour in most places, except for Snug Harbor. At Snug Harbor, they're 90 minutes. But I thought about being up there for an hour, and I said, you know what, I could start trying to get some gigs as a piano player. And just the idea of having accomplished that sort of pushed me in the direction of being a piano player.
You spoke a little bit about the Musicians Union. Can you speak a little more on your experience with them, the Musicians Union?
He's talking about the Musicians Union.
The musicians.
The Musicians Union, your experience with the Musicians Union? I don't know.
What about the union?
I don't know, what about the union?
Just wonder if you have any past experience or current experience with the union?
Past experience or current experience? I don't know about you, I'm not in the union anymore.
Well, the question is about the Musicians Union. Now, what you have to understand about the Musicians Union here, and I have to refer to it as here, because see, Louisiana is what is known as a right-to-work state. So that means whatever job you can get, you don't need to belong to a union, I think. Don't quote me on that. There may be some other professions around that you do have to belong to a union. As for the Musicians Union, there was no music industry here, not to speak of. So the union sort of emulated what happened in Los Angeles and New York and Chicago. And I remember I got a job with a singer named Earl Williams, and what the guys in the band, they just said, go down and join the union. Now, there was no explanation as to what, why, or any of that. So they were like adults. So I said, okay, you know. So I went and I joined a union, of which I have been a member of since. If you really want to understand unionism, you would have to really do some research. Because, you know, like I said, the musicians union here is in a right to work state. Now, if you went to Los Angeles and you were in a position to get a job in a studio, you know, just as a side person, playing whatever, piano, violin, or whatever, you're out of luck if you're not in a union. But see, Los Angeles has a music industry. And it's the same thing with New York. They have a music industry. So there's a union. And I think Chicago too. My experience has basically been positive because after I was vetted, which was, I forget what the age is, like I get a very small pension from the union now, after having been in there for a long period of time. I would suggest that if you want to be a professional musician, you should consider joining a union so that you can get a good understanding of what that means. Now, unionism in this country has a long history. And since this is not a civic class, I'm not going to go into all of that because it gets very, very complicated. Going back to Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal and John L. Lewis and the CIO and the AFL and all of that. But those were unions that were connected to industries. So that if you were working in the coal mine, there was a coal miners union. If you were working in the steel mill, there was a steel workers union. All of those kinds of things. But eventually, the powers that be, after the Second World War, which for all intents and purposes ended in 1945, within a 10 to 15 year period, the Japanese rebuilt their whole economy and was able to start selling steel to America cheaper than America could build steel in Pittsburgh or Birmingham or wherever. So there you have it, competition. You know, and it was like that all the time. You know, I don't know if any of you was paying any attention to your current president who went in coal mining country and told those people that he was going to bring back clean coal and all of that nonsense. So, but the point is, looking at music, one of the things that you have to understand is that there's skills that you need to have, because you don't necessarily may not want to just stay in the city of New Orleans. Now, there's a much better shake at an industry in Nashville, Tennessee than there is here. But nonetheless, my suggestion would be that if you want to be a professional musician, then it'd be a good idea for you to at least join the union and find out what's being offered and what the possibilities are from now on into the future. But in the final analysis, the one thing you cannot beat or do without, you must have skills. So if you come to a class or a program like Jazz Studies program, if you really want to deal with this music, then you need to develop jazz skills. And I'm saying it like that for lack of a better way of saying it. Because quite often, some students don't necessarily understand when a piano teacher says that you need to study that first book, A Prelude and Fugue, about jazz Bach. Because, hey man, that ain't jazz. You're right, it's not. But it will sure help you to lead towards the development of jazz skills. Just about all of the players, the younger players, people your age and maybe a little older, who are entering into the market. I was looking at Jazz at Lincoln Center one night. It was streaming. And there were at least 10 pianists, exchanging, one would play for a while and get up, another would play for a while and get up. It was like featuring pianists over there. And I mean, all of them had very, very high skills on that instrument. And I don't think that you can get around that. You gotta have some skills if you intend to be a professional.
I was wondering if you could talk about your songwriting process.
Your compositional process, you composing songs. How do you go about composing like a song? Do you have a process?
Composition is also one of those things that can be difficult to define. Depending on the music you listen to will largely determine whatever compositions you decide to compose and how they will come out. There's a lot of pieces that are composed. For example, I was talking to somebody not long ago about the Beatles. The spiritual side of the Beatles came from George Harrison, who was older than the other guys in the group. So if you go and listen to some of the Beatles songs and the ones that George Harrison wrote, then you can hear that and where he was coming from in terms of, his composition. Now, Lucy in the Sky of Diamonds, that's another thing. And there's no one way to describe. What I will say this, I think it'd be good if you have piano skills, not necessarily having studied Bach preludes and all of that, but you have to have some chord affiliation, so that when you play, if you want to write something, you do need to have the ability to notate on a page what it is that you happen to be singing, whatever that is. You see? So that means there again, you venture into the area of having skills, certain types of skills.
I got a follow-up question. Of all the songs you composed, of all your songs, a lot of them have become standards, right? We've been playing them a lot.
They have?
Yeah,
I didn't
you,
know.
because you don't like to play them a lot. I don't want to play 12s in anymore. But of all the songs you've composed, is there one or two that you say, I'm really proud of that? This is like the one I really like the best. Right? Is there anyone you can think of?
Did everybody hear what he asked me? Yeah, of the songs that I composed, is there one or two that I'm mostly proud of? I feel pretty good about After, which is a ballad that I wrote many, many years ago. The story on 12 Zip was the thing that's interesting about that. I remember playing that for Harold Batiste, and I just played the chord just the way it felt. Now, what I was hearing was 5-1, 5-1, 5-1 chords. That's all that I heard. And when I played it for him, I said, man, the only thing that I need to do now, I said, is to just get a melody for this. And he said, what do you mean? The melody's already there. And when I re-listened to what I was playing, I realized that he was right. You know, the melody to 12 Zip was already there.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
I don't know, I've never played a lot of my own music. I remember one night we were at Snug Harbor, and somebody came in and said they wanted to play Swinging at the Haven. And the bass player said, man, he said, we played this song with everybody in the city but you. And it was my song. So, you know, I just never thought that much about it. To me, I guess learning meant embracing songs that I either didn't know or needed to do some more work on. But if I had a finished product of something that I had done, then that was done.
I think this might be a good time. Can we run over a song with the band you're going to play tomorrow night with?
Yeah, all right.
Just to kind of, y'all get acquainted and stuff like that. How about this is the Derek Doge Ensemble. Derek, do you have a catchy name for your ensemble?
No.
Okay. We'll call it the Derek Doge 2 p.m. Ensemble. By the way, guys, tomorrow night, what's going to happen is set, but it's going to basically be Ellis's set, and then after that, we follow with the UNO Jazz jam session. So there'll be a jam session following about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So if you want to play tomorrow night, bring your instruments and play the jam session.
I'm a piano player.
Yeah.
All right.
Why don't you let Ellis play first? Yeah, you.
I hear better if somebody else is playing.
Yeah? Okay, all right, yeah.
Yep.
Give him a chair. Why don't you sit here so you can play a little bit the blues? What? Double drop? Oh, yeah. Do you want to play? Don't sit.
I think we should do that. Yeah.
to ask you a question. I remember one time I did a clinic in Virginia a long time ago. And after the band played, you went to every person in the band and said, "What did you hear?" What did you hear?
Well, first of all, going back to the days when I was teaching at that arts high school, one of the things that I made it a habit never to do was to make any evaluation on anybody's solo, because that your solo is your solo. So I listened to the context. You know, did the band play the melody? If you played the melody, did you play it so that everybody seemed as though they were on the same page, doing the same thing? You know, and for the most part, that's what I heard. Toward the end, I think somebody disconnected with the drummer for whatever that was. See, y'all can straighten that out. But basically, that's what I heard. But I think that the concept of the song is there, you know. There's a good tempo. Do you play electric piano?
Yeah.
How often?
Not as often since I went here, but
Huh?
ever since I started going here, I haven't played electric, but I learned piano on electric.
Well, you may want to evaluate your technique. See, I've always noticed that, you know, people who play electric pianos for any extended period of time, that the switch to a pianoforte can be difficult in terms of getting a sound out of it, because you end up playing right on top of the keys, which is something that develops when you play electric piano that often. Anybody else want to make a critique of this band?
You looking at me?
There.
Critiques?
Do you think that the tempo got slower or faster?
Faster.
Faster.
You think it was only that much?
But not too much. But yeah, towards the end.
I could say something on piano. I think elaborating on what he said is putting your weight behind the keys, because with the plastic keys, you don't have to put much weight behind it to make it sound, but with the piano, it's your body weight that's creating the sound. So,
What, were you addressing that to me?
No.
Oh, yeah.
What happened with the beat turning around? Like what?
At the end,
Yeah.
I disconnected from Travis at the end of his solo, and I think we should have waited until I was sure where he was.
So that moment that happens where you're like, uh-oh, and you still play it?
Yep.
Yeah, next time just don't.
Yeah, I got
don't
it.
play.
Yeah.
I've done it, we've all done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all done it.
Yeah.
It's hard to reject that reflex to just play, because
Yeah.
it's like, this is the time I'm supposed to play, but
Yeah.
it's better to just connect with what you're hearing. If you're not hearing it in your head, then just don't do it.
Yeah.
Oh. Do I have anything to say? No. But I'd like to hear, I think they would really like if you could play something.
Yeah.
Not that I intended to say that.
Yeah, right.
piece I wrote and still can't play.
Cool. Yeah, you know, you did more than enough, man. I don't know if you want to play anymore or talk anymore, but I mean, you know, I think does anybody have any more questions they'd like to ask Ellis?
Any more questions?
Derek Doge has a question.
Can you play after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great Ellis Marsalis.
Hope to see everybody tomorrow night at Jazz at the Sandbar. And like I say, we have a jam session afterwards, so bring your instruments. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, band. Cool, man. That was wonderful.